لكن تحديت الظروف وخضتها وحدي صبورا مستعينا بالصلاة. كم مرة عصف الأنين بداخلي، كم مرة قد ذاق قلبي من أساه محن تمر، وكم كرهت مصابها.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. How you doing, everyone? We're almost at the end of Ramadan, about 13 days from today's date. Walillahi alhamdu wa minna. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your siyam, your qiyam, your salat, your dua, and don't forget the people of Palestine in your du'as, as they are going through so much turmoil and a siege, as we know, in northern Gaza and in Gaza generally. Now, today's video is following on in the genre regarding transparency from our charities. And one mufti, may Allah guide him and guide us and reward him for the good he does. It's not an attack. It's not accusing him of foul play, but it causes many to question those who sign off fatwa or create report to the document. It shows issues, and I want to ask the pertinent questions to our brother, because ultimately it's an issue and he would know this. So as a disclaimer, this brother is much more knowledgeable than me, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us with his ilm. But his document has issues, and we'll get into his response to me on Twitter. We'll break it down because there's some questions I'd like to ask. So as you can see on screen, we've got our brother Mufti Faraz Adam, Hafidahullah wa ta'ala, and he was an employee for the National Zakat Foundation and also for Yaqeen. And he also now has his own, I think it's bonds and stuff. I don't know, you could correct me. Mufti Faraz Ahmed Adam, Executive Director, Head of Sharia Advisory for Amana Advisor, forgive me. And this is this brother who we are responding to today. Many years ago, he used to work for National Zakat Foundation, subhanAllah al-Azim. And during that particular time, there was a CEO, the investment banker, and he created a document giving them Islamic legitimacy, and it was riddled with technicalities, misquotations, etc. Now, unfortunately, I know we can grow, but the evidences that he used, when you go into them, I can't find any excuses for him, unfortunately. What I mean by excuses is that he is knowledgeable. He's a mufti. He's graduated in iftah. He gives fatwa. And if this is, at once upon a time, he was employed, was he taking zakat money as part of his employment? If he's now retracted. Anyway, you can see the document, our zakat distribution strategy. And under zakat is pulled, he's given fiqh evidence and explanation. So he mentions, in the early period of Islam, zakat collection and distribution was a governmental department and function. It was the legitimate authority or government which collected all zakat proceeds and distributed them. Today, even though we live in the UK as a Muslim minority with no official mandate in community leadership, this should not mean that zakat is regulated entirely to the realm of personal charity. In fact, now this is evidence. In particular, the Jews argue, in particular, Ibn Abadin, died 1252, quoting Ibn al-Hammam, died 861, that where Muslims live in a minority, they should have a centralized body representing them and dealing with their religious affairs in a unified, centralized manner. And he gives a quotation of 30. We're going to get to that, so bear with me. Therefore, even if such body does not exist, meaning the Imam or the Wali, to represent all the affairs of the Muslims in a particular place, organizations should emerge to at least deal with aspects of these communal concerns, meaning zakat and whatnot. Like NZF is doing for zakat, all right? And as he mentioned. So come back to me now. So he quoted Ibn Abadin. So he referenced Ibn Abadin, quoted Ibn al-Hammam. I'm Hanafi Athari, so I would like to ask Mufti a sincere question. Did you really, really review the contents of what Ibn Abadin was referencing from Ibn Hammam? I'm going to get to that, but what I'm going to show you is, as a Hanafi, right, I'm going to present other Imams from the Ahnaf. So you can't just say Hajj's presented a a shad opinion from the Ahnaf, because you use this to give NZF legitimacy, which is strange. So let's go into some books of the Ahnaf, even the quotation you quoted, to show you how did you come to this conclusion. How? Honestly, I'm baffled. As a grade below a student of knowledge, I am shocked, and that's putting it lightly. So as you can see on screen, we've got the book Al-Bahr al-Ra'iq, and this is basically the fiqh of the furu' of the Hanafis, meaning the Ahnaf. Okay, and this is written by Al-Ma'ruf Bihafid al-Din al-Nasafi. All right, so this is in the chapter of Kitabul Qada, meaning the judiciary. And he mentions, now this is where I'm surprised with Mufti Faraz, he's quoting Ibn Hammam, right? This is regarding the kuffar taking over Muslim lands. And he mentions, quoting Fathul Qadir, and he quotes Fathul Qadir, the same book he was quoting from Ibn Abadin. وَإِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ سُلْطَانٌ وَلَا مَنْ يُجُوزُ تَقْلِيدُ مِنْهُ كَمَا هُوَ فِي بَعْضِ الْبِلَادِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ غَلَبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ في بلاد المغرب كقرطبة الآن وبلنسيا وبلاد الحبش وأقر المسلمين عندهم على مال يؤخذ منهم يجب عليهم أن يتفقوا على واحد منهم يجعلونه واليا فيولى قاضيا ويكون هو الذي يقضي بينهم وكذا ينسبون إماما يصلي بهم. So he mentions if there's no sultan and it's not permissible to just follow anyone, as is the case, or like it's in the case, in some of the lands of the Muslims, غَلَبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ, as the kuffar has taken over the Muslims in some of the western lands in the Maghrib, like Qurtuba, like when the Catholics took over, and in Valencia and some of the Bilad al-Habash. So what the Muslims should do is they should decide between them to nominate someone as a wali that they should follow, or a judge, so that they can judge between them, right? They could judge between them. So come back to me now. So Mufti Faraz Adam, I'd like to ask you, how is that relevant, right, to the situation in the UK when you're using that evidence and trying to promote National Zakat Foundation, right? I'm just curious. So it's regarding when the Muslims' lands are taken over, and obviously we're not going to follow the kuffar who have taken over our lands, غَلَبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ. Then what we should do is appoint one from amongst us to deal with like the Jum'ah and whatnot. So how did you come to that conclusion regarding that we should basically have a centralized body, and as National Zakat Foundation, how have you connected that to that? I just want to. You mentioned Ibn Abadin quoted Ibn Hammam. I quoted another book which you didn't quote to show you that it's precedent from the Ahnaf. Let's quote the book that you quoted to see if it's the exact same thing as in Al-Bahr al-Ra'iq. So as you can see on screen, we've got Radd al-Mukhtar, okay, by Ibn Abadin, and here's the statement that you quoted, right? Here's the statement that you quoted. So it's a clear misrepresentation. Clear. It refers to the Muslim lands being overtaken by the kuffar, right? How have you applied that from what Ibn Hammam was saying, and the author in Al-Bahr al-Ra'iq and Ibn Abadin in his Radd al-Mukhtar, how have you connected that to the situation in the UK, or in that context to the Muslims in the UK? He mentions the 4 categories by Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, and we're going to go into them just to show you that it's all over the place the way he translated it. But that's not a major concern. It's number C that we've got an issue with. So he mentions Muslim leaders with faith, with shaky, etc. It's there, you could read it. But I just want to get you to number 3 with the arrows over. He states, Muslims who strove to defend Muslims against hostile narratives, right? Hostile narratives. We want to focus on that for a sec, okay? So what I'll do, I'll go into Ibn Qudama's Al-Mughni. So as you can see, we've got Al-Mughni by Ibn Qudama Al-Maqdisi, Fasl. As you can see, we've got Al-Mughni by Ibn Qudama Al-Maqdisi. So you got the Fasl, and he mentions, وَالْمُؤَلِّفَةُ قُلُوبُهُمْ ضَرْبَانِ. That the Mu'allifa or Mu'allifatu Qulubuhum are 2 categories, Kuffarun wal Muslimun, وهم جميعا سادات مطاعون في قومهم وعشائرهم. That they are the leaders who are obeyed from their people and their tribes. So he mentions that the kuffar have 2 categories, and he mentions them. So he mentioned the first group of Muslims, قوم من سادات المسلمين لهم نظراء من الكفار ومن المسلمين الذين لهم نية حسنة في الإسلام فإذا أعطوا رجي الإسلام نظرائهم وحسن نيتهم فيجوز إعطاؤهم لأن أبا بكر رضي الله عنه أعطى عدي بن حاتم وزبرقان بن بدر مع حسن نيتهم وإسلامهم. So this is where I'm a bit confused, because he's put B as prominent Muslims whose social status were respected by those who were not Muslim, who have status in their own communities, consider Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Abu Bakr giving to Adi bin Hatim and Zibriqan bin Badr, who were obviously committed Muslims, was of this nature. But that's number one. That's the first group. He put it in B, as you can see. Again, it doesn't really make a difference, but الضرب الثاني, the second group of people, سادات مطاعون في قومهم, that the group of people whose leaders are obeyed, يرجى بأعطيتهم قوة إيمانهم, that basically inclining them and giving to them so that it strengthens their iman, ومناصحتهم في الجهاد, and to advise them for jihad, فإنهم يعطون, for indeed they are given, meaning from the مؤلفة قلوبهم. Then he mentioned لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, because the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم أعطى أيينة بن حصن, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم gave أيينة بن حصن وأقرع بن حابس, and he gave to أقرع بن حابس, وعلقمة بالعذاثة, and he gave to علقمة, والطلقاء من أهل المكة, and he gave to the طلقاء of أهل المكة. So I'm looking at his translation here on the categories or the meta categories, and he's not mentioned that. Like, I'm looking at it and I can't see that at all. It's not problematic, but I mean, a person who's knowledgeable and whose caliber of understanding the deen, being a mufti, I think there should have been at least something mentioned about, the leaders of their people that incline, or if you give them, they incline and it strengthens their iman. But B, which is Darbu Thani, doesn't mention that at all, where he mentions prominent Muslims whose social status was respected by those who were not Muslim in the community. Consider Abu Bakr giving Ibn Abi Hatim, that was number one. That was قوم من سادات من المسلمين لهم نظراء من الكفار ومن المسلمين الذين لهم نية حسنة في الإسلام فإذا أعطوا رجي الإسلام نظرائهم وحسن نيتهم فيجوز إعطاءهم لأن أبو بكر. That was the first one. When the arrow's over, pay attention to this now, because we're going to go to his article as well. الضرب الثالث, the third category, قوم في طرف بلاد الإسلام, that a group who are on the edges of the lands of Islam, إذا أعطوا, if they are given, دفعوا عمن يليهم من المسلمين, that if you pay them, right, they would defend what, meaning in terms of the ribat, they would defend the Muslims, meaning who are close to them. The ones who are close to them are who? The kuffar, from the hudud, right? The Diyar al-Muslimin, or the Bilad al-Islam. Now, he mentions, now that's what it actually means, right? What does Mufti Faraz Adam mention in his original meta category? He states that according to number 3, Muslims who strove to defend Muslim against hostile narratives. But then he further adds, after adding, Imam al-Nawawi describes al-mu'allifati qulubuhum with similar beneficial and majmu'. We're going to get to that. I'm going to show you that he took it out of context and he mistranslated it in terms of the reality of what Ibn Qudama was intending. And Imam Nawawi also highlights the same category of Muslims in his majmu' in the third, which corresponds to what I'm saying. But what does Mufti Faraz Adam mention? That when he talks about tamlik, meaning to own or to possess, right? He mentions that different types of people are supported by al-mu'allifati qulubuhum, as stated by Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama states that zakat can be paid under al-mu'allifati qulubuhum to a Muslim who strive to spread Islam in the wider society and work to protect the interests of Muslims and Islam. Like, that doesn't say that. That doesn't say that. So coming back to me now. So Mufti Faraz Adam, that's not what Ibn Qudama was intending. And you might ask, well, how do you know? I'll go into Imam Nawawi's majmu', which you highlighted, and how does Imam Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi what does Imam Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi mention, which corresponds to what Imam Qudama was saying, قوم في طرف بلاد الإسلام إذا أعطوا دفعوا عمن يليهم من المسلمين. What does Imam Nawawi say? As you can see on screen, book Kitabul Mujmu' by Imam Nawawi, and this is the Sharh of Al-Shirazi's Muhaddab, and he mentions, as you can see on screen, where the arrow's over, والضرب الثالث, the third category, قوم يليهم قوم من الكفار, that a group that follows a group of the kuffar, if you give them what? They would fight them. They will fight them. قاتلهم. قاتلهم. So it's not about protecting the interest. Look, come back to me now. Mufti Faraz Ahmed, I am flabbergasted that how you can manipulate and distort the statements in the manner that you did, even if it's 6 years ago. Because look, you were working for them. So when you are put in a position where it's either providing transparency to the correct understanding of the ulama of the past, because you're the gate, you're the gatekeeper, and you're translating it in such a manner, then I could only assume, and Allah knows best, that there was some vested interest or you were dictated to. That's the only explanations I have. How is it that a man of your caliber, with your ilm, can misconstrue, decontextualize, misapply such statements in this manner? Wallah al-Azim, I am flabbergasted. As you can see on screen, we've got Fathul Bari by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. And he mentions, Muslim bin Yasar said, Abi Abdullah mentioned that a man from the Sahaba would say that الزكاة والحدود والفي والجمعة إلى السلطان. That the zakat, the hudud, the spoils of war, and the jum'ah for the sultan. Right? For who? The sultan. Now, why we say this is because the zakat was always centralized. Right? Was always what? Centralized with the dawla, with the khilafah, or with the wali, or imara. I am sorry that you're trying to analogize that National Zakat Foundation can use the zakat money. I'm sorry, that's not correct. That's not correct at all. So going to the Ahnaf now, we've got the book Bada'i Sana'i, okay, by Imam al-Kasani. And when he mentions about the Jum'ah, right, so as you can see on screen, he mentions هذا إذا كان سلطان أو نائبه حاضرا فأما إذا لم يكن إماما بسبب الفتنة أو بسبب الموت ولم يحضر والئا آخر بعد حتى حضرت الجمعة ذكر القرخي أنه لا بأس أن يجمع الناس على رجل حتى يصلي بهم الجمعة. So even if there's no wali or there's no leader and there's no one there to lead the salah, then it can be appointed, someone else can lead the salah. Okay? وهكذا روي عن محمد ذكره في العيون لما روي عن عثمان رضي الله عنه أنه لما خسر قدم الناس عليا رضي الله عنه فصلى بهم الجمعة. So when Uthman رضي الله عنه was besieged, he was the leader, right? And they appointed Ali رضي الله عنه. Furthermore, as you can see, we've got the book Al-Banayatu Shahrul Hidayah, and he mentions from Imam Muhammad that if Masr was taken over, and you meaning from the kuffar, mutaghallib, and they pray the Jum'ah Salah is jaiz, meaning that anyone can lead the Jum'ah Salah. That if the people come together and they pray the Jum'ah, that's jaiz. Right? That is what? That is jaiz. So, coming back to me now. How is it possible, Mufti Faraz Adam, that you as a Mufti were able to try to connect it to here, to there, to here, to there? I'm sorry. I find this is unacceptable for someone in a position of power to misrepresent the text, with all due respect. And I respect you, because you are a Mufti, you've gone through the studies, but I can't, fathom that this is your evidence to support National Zakat Foundation. Continued on, he mentions a statement from Imam Dasuki, right, that the Jama'atul Muslimin is equivalent to the Muslim ruler at all times. You know the Hanafi position on this. Now, if you look at the chapter, as you can see, this is in Babul Nafaqa, that meaning the expenditure. And he was talking about, disputes between a husband and a wife. So when he mentions Jama'atul Muslimin al-Udul, as you can see, it's not referring to anyone that just takes over and then now they could distribute the zakat however they want, etc., etc. Do you understand? It's not possible like. You can see on screen we've got a tweet from Mufti Faraz Adam, and he mentioned, that he wrote this document 6 years ago. He didn't work for NZF anymore. He's actually left in 2019. I think on his LinkedIn he mentions 2021, but that doesn't really matter. And it was a research task. I wish I had consulted more senior ulama. He mentions that what gives me comfort that this document is not a live document anymore. At this stage of my life, my views on zakat are not reflecting that document. I generally believe zakat is only for the fuqara and that waqf and other institutions need to be developed to support other activities. Now, come back to me now. Now, what I think I'd like to ask, noble brother, is you now responded 6 years after writing this document, right? And I'm aware that certain ulama and muftis wrote a rebuttal of your article, which you remained silent. On top of that, if you don't hold the views that you did back then, which you were promoting, and you were working for them, then how does it feel that you were working for an organization that was taking zakat money and potentially paying you with zakat money? And if that's the case and you actually recant from that, are you going to pay that money back? Number 3 is that when you were working for National Zakat Foundation and you made, this generic statement that you no longer agree with it, what is it that you don't agree with it? And why is it that it took you so long? Like I repeat again, why? 6 years, 7 years it took you to respond to me, which I highlighted certain issues with the article. And there was a mufti that wrote against you as well, a very popular mufti, in fact. And one thing I like to stress is that do not be influenced to the capitalistic agenda. Because look, if you disagree with National Zakat Foundation, are you able to pinpoint what it is? What was it that you didn't agree with? Because it's a very generic statement. And as you can see from this video, I am unable to give you the benefit of the doubt. 6 years in or 7 years in, I can't give you the benefit of the doubt based on the fact that you misconstrued, decontextualized, misapplied various statements of the ulama. And I can't give you no excuse. How much knowledge you have, if this is the level of transparency you have to support your views, because it was your views at that time, and you had statements of the ulama in front of you, and you were translating documents and kutub in the manner that you did, how can you really be trusted? But Tawbah, the door of Tawbah is open until the sun rises from the west. So we all got hope. Bismillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So take care of yourself. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.
ليس الغريب غريب الشام واليمن، إن الغريب غريب اللحد والكفن، إن الغريب له حق لغربته على المقيمين في الأوطان والسكن، سفر بعيد وزاد لن يبلغني وقوتي ضعفت والموت يطلبني، ما أحلم الله عني حيث أمهلني، وقد تماديت في ذنبي ويسترني، تمر ساعة